Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you call it fate. This is what Jung said about the unconscious. So, how the hell do we control it? Can we control it? Some people say we can't, but let's try to understand this a little bit more. So, the first thing that you have to keep in mind is that what you call you is actually a bunch of people. You are not one thing. So we have, in theory, 3 parts. We have the conscious, we have the subconscious, and the unconscious. So, these 3 talk to each other, but they don't necessarily access the same information. Therefore, they may have different needs, different wants, and so on and so forth. Everything that you do, most of the time, is driven actually by these 2. So, for the most part of your life, you're actually an automaton. You're a robot, if you think about it. Because what you're doing is you are repeating some actions day to day, and you don't change them, and they are run kind of in automatic. When something becomes automatic, it becomes kind of like a software running on the background, right? You have a background software running, and this is going to be stored here in the subconscious / unconscious. The only difference between the 2 is that this one is a little bit deeper, right? It's harder to get access here. So, let's try to understand something. What we call karma can be understood as you basically attaching yourself to an idea. Say, I attach myself to the idea that I have hair, right? So I attach myself to that. This eventually then enters this area, the subconscious, unconscious area. And again, like I said, it becomes software running on the background. So we start to repeat this action over and over and over. This has nothing to do with judgment or getting that what you did back to you. This is just plain old programming. Everything that you understand as spirituality or mysticism, a code, so on and so on, are just technologies. That's it. Simple as that. So, if this is software, it means you can program it, right? One of the ways you get your subconscious and unconscious programmed, for example, I already said this in another video, if I'm not mistaken, on the High Priestess video, is music. So all the musics, songs, everything you listen to, they're just programming you, because this part of your brain doesn't really care for logic much. So if you start just listening to music that says, for example, that your wife is gonna cheat on you or something like this, like a guy crying about his wife cheating on him, this doesn't differentiate you from that guy. It thinks you are the one going through that. Therefore, again, it becomes software running on the background, and you start to repeat those actions over and over and over, and eventually it happens to you. So if you start listening to music about being poor or whatever it is, you're just programming yourself with not so good, let's say, fruits, okay? So this is a good example of how you can control a large group of people, because you make a catchy rhythm, you throw in some lyrics, and then everyone just starts singing that. This happens a lot in countries like Brazil, for example, where people have some culture already of listening to music and really enjoying it, and then you can just use that to your advantage if you are someone that controls that environment. Or if you start to understand this, you can use this in your favor. For example, nowadays we live in a world where you can just use AI to create music. Why not create a music of your own style with the lyrics that would make you have a better programming and just start listening to them over and over and over? Or even better, learn how to play an instrument, learn how to sing, and create your own music. That's one way, for example. Another way is through images. So when you watch an ad, for example, think about it. Why would companies pay such large amounts of money to play something to you for 5 seconds only? And most of the times it seems like gibberish. Like if you take a car ad, it's some random guy, it's sometimes not even showing in the car, it's just him with his family or him with a hot chick or something. Why would they show this? Wouldn't it make sense, be logical for them to show the car being fast, being secure or whatever it is? Well, not really, because most of these guys talk in symbols. Or, like some guys like to call them as well, archetypes. So for example, when you see the butterfly archetype or symbol, the butterfly talks about changes, about it being a metamorphosis thing. So when you see it, you are impelled to do changes. This is not something that it's like logical, that you're gonna think, oh, I saw a butterfly, therefore I'm gonna change something. This is again happening on the background. These are like apps that are stored already in your operating system that you're going to just run. This is why it's very important to understand the symbols, what they really mean or what they can mean, and so on and so on. Or even better, how to reprogram them. This is something the Empress talks about, which I already made a video on. So again, by understanding that these guys talk in symbols, you can understand, for example, how most of the stories are not actually literal. When you read something, even let's say a sacred book, it is not literal. Understand, there's nothing literal in a simulator. There's nothing, I'm gonna repeat myself. There's nothing literal in a simulator. So everything is spoken in symbols and parables and so on and so on. If you don't understand them, they're going to go straight to your subconscious and conscious and start running as a background software. By the way, on the music tip, it is very interesting if you can even make a music that is not on your native language or in the language that you understand. Because again, if you understand the lyric in the literal sense, you start to process it more with the left brain side, and again, it doesn't go straight to your unconscious. So better if you can listen to music or create music with good lyrics, but in another language. Therefore, it goes straight to your unconscious, subconscious. Now, there's many things that we can keep talking about here. For example, every time you see a cave, so like a dark place that someone goes, you are talking about, again, the subconscious and the unconscious, the deep seas. So pay attention to that when you hear stories about caves, when you see symbology about caves. This is what is being shown there, the subconscious, the unconscious. Now, let me check my notes because there are a lot of things that I want to talk about here. And the next one, oh yeah, this is very interesting. So, how do we first get things into our subconscious? So let's assume for a second that we come to this life blank. This is not the case, by the way, we already come with some stuff, but let's assume for a moment, and for the sake of simplicity, that we come here blank, okay? Without any programming. Who are the first people that we are going to interact? Well, we are going to interact with our parents. Not only, and you can say, oh, but I grew with like a different kind of people, I'm an orphan or whatever. Well, you were already interacting with them by your genes. So think about it. All your cells are basically nano robots with some kind of programming to do something. For example, why do you breathe automatically? Why do you process food and so on? These are all robots, nano robots, right? They're really small and they're programmed to do something. So these are the genes, your DNA. And you were born already with the sum of the genes of your mother and father, and with their mothers and fathers, and so on and so on and so on. So if you just come to this life and you don't have the will to change anything in you, you're just basically going to be the sum of all your ancestors, and you're going to repeat the same actions over and over and over and over. And you can say, but I'm the complete opposite of my father. Well, you're just controlled by the same thing. You're just the other side of the coin, but you're still being controlled. Until you make your own decision, which is not necessarily, let's say, because of someone else, has to be from inside, has to be taken all the mass and everything that you think you are to get to the root of things, right? So again, you're going to be the sum of your parents. Then obviously your environment, like the country you're living in. So next time you go to eat, think to yourself, why do you eat the stuff you eat? For example, if you come from Latin America, you probably eat a lot of rice, maybe rice with beans and steaks and so on. Why? Would it be, let's say, strange to not eat those in the day-to-day? Just eat pasta, for example, or just eat potatoes and fish. Well, in theory it would, but that's just because your programming was different. If you were born in a place like, let's say, Northern Europe, you're probably gonna eat different stuff. The same if you're born in Asia, so on, so on, so on. So again, it only comes down to programming. But if you keep being attached to that programming, you're just limiting yourself. You're just saying, look, I'm this. Whereas there's this much stuff to be, but you're limiting yourself just to this small circle. Well, you cannot grow if you limit yourself. If you don't experience new things, like for example, talk to different kinds of people, eat different things, do things in a different way. I'm not saying like go do something, let's say, completely ridiculous and crazy and completely different. Yeah, sure, go do these as well, but start from the basics. If you always brush your teeth in a way, brush it differently, in different hours, in different ways. Find a way that works best for you. Don't make this the role, don't make the role of a third party to say stuff to you. So that's the double-edged sword with, let's say, college or religion and so on. When you have some kind of guru and whatever, is that they're gonna talk to you like, hey, go do this that way. And you're just gonna assume this is the best way possible. Well, not necessarily. Especially when you take, for example, college, where you're learning the average of stuff that worked. You cannot be someone that breaks through and discover new things if you're just working by the average. If you're doing the average actions, you're gonna have average results. Simple as that, is math, right? So coming back to the subconscious and the unconscious, there's another interesting parallels since, like I mentioned, there's nothing literal that is being talked about in anywhere. There's nothing literal in the simulator. There's something really interesting for the Bible enthusiasts. It's on John 14:6. So we have here 14:6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? I'll put it here. The way, the truth, and the life. Again, nothing is literal. So what does this mean? The first one, the way, is going to be the courtyard. And this is what? This is the conscious. Then we have the priest, which is the truth. Let me go here. The priest. Which is the subconscious. And we have the life, which is the holy of holies. Which is going to be the life and the unconscious. So when you start to understand texts this way, you start to see what's really down there. So it's not talking about a literal way or a literal truth, a literal life, and so on. It's always some code back to you. You are the technology of your being. Everything that man creates is just looking at nature and trying to replicate. This that you are watching with right now, your cell phone, your computer, whatever it is, my microphone, the lights, everything, this pen, everything is just a copy of nature. This is also another thing to understand. This whole world is built on copies and plagiarism. So even these stories, if you're a huge fan of them, sorry to break it down to you, these are just copies from something else. Which is not to say they don't hold any value, but just remember, if you accept this as the only truth possible, you're limiting yourself to a very small circle, whereas the word is a much bigger one, right? This should be even smaller. You're like limiting yourself to be this small point here. The whole world is much, much, much bigger than that. So accept to understand that you should experience more stuff, at least to try to understand it for what they really are. And you're going to see how much value you get from it. There are some other parallels we can do. For example, we have Hermes, which is called thrice great. Here. We have Hermes. I think it's called like this in English. Trismegistus. And he's called the thrice great, which is 3 times great, right? Again, thrice great on the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious levels, which here would be the sun, the subconscious, the moon, and the unconscious, I'm gonna drag it down here, Earth. Here we're talking about initiations, about mystery schools. So the sun, that which is revealed, which is conscious, we can see it, right? The subconscious, the moon, that which is, let's say the false light, which is hidden, it's a code, doesn't have its own light, the moon. And the unconscious, which is Earth. We can go even further. We can say the sun, for example. The Nordics would call it Asgard, the land of aces. We come back to the tarot, the first card. It's the beginning, the most powerful card, Kether on the Kabbalah, Asgard. Then we have the subconscious, which would be Helheim, right? Exactly, which would be Helheim, which is like the hell, the underworld. And finally, we have Midgard, the land of men. Or we can go even further and say the Helheim is where Hades is situated, for example. Asgard is going to be where all the gods are situated. And the earth, where all the humans are situated. So here the Olympians, the gods, and here the humans. You can start to see how it's all a play, it's all symbols. When you start to see the symbols again, you're gonna understand, oh, this is what they mean. And you can start to connect them, and you can start to reprogram yourself. Okay? Other correlations we can make here. This is interesting, but maybe not everyone will be super benefited from it for now, but the conscious is going to be the major arcana from the tarot. Right? The subconscious is going to be the minor arcana. Subconscious, yes, minor arcana. And the unconscious is going to be the royalship cards. Royalship cards, which are situated in Da'ath from the Kabbalah. So you can start to see how all of these symbolisms and mysteries and technologies and so on, all these knowledge, they talk to each other, right? Another very interesting thing to see is how astrology works using that lens. I'm not going to go super deep today in the astrology, but if you like that, you can just let me know and I can maybe expand. But if you ever seen an astrology map, you're going to have something like this. You're going to have like a circle, and here you're going to have all the signs, for example, here, and like Libra here and the other side, and so on, right? Cancer, like this, something like this, whatever. You get what I mean. You're going to have the signs, and you're going to have the houses, like maybe this is like the 8th, and like you have 9th, 10th, 11th, so on and so forth. You have all the houses. This, the outer part, is going to be your conscious behaviors. Then you go a little bit further, and then you have the planets. Like for example, maybe you have the Sun in Aries, and you have like Venus here, and so on. You have the planets. So it's a little bit in the middle. These, the planets, are going to be the subconscious part of your brain. And if you go a little bit further, you're going to have aspects between them. So maybe you have like a square between the Venus and the Sun, or maybe you have like the Moon making an opposition to the Sun and so on. So these are called the aspects. It's how they interact between one another. And this is going to be your unconscious. So the houses are like the playing field. Where are those guys acting? Which is their environment. Where are they playing? Then the planets are going to be the characters themselves, the actors. So the Greeks would think these are gods, like this is Apollo, this is Aphrodite, Mars is Aries, so on and so forth. And you can imagine you being the CEO of all those guys. You're watching them make a play. This is all a play. And then how they interact with one another, let's say they have an opposition, so they have tension between one another. They don't like each other. So they're gonna fight. It's gonna be a little bit harder. Or they have like a trine, so they work together, or conjunction, they work together. Again, these are the aspects. So this is how they treat each other. So maybe in your map, Zeus looks at Apollo and is like, bro, I don't like you. You know, I'm not gonna help you out. Or the opposite, he's like, oh, I really like you, let's help each other. So again, you start to understand how this is just your internals working. What is in the sky is just showing what is here as well. It's all a mirror. It's all fractals within fractals and so on and so on. So when you start to understand one thing, you can understand other things. You make bridges between all the knowledges. That's the idea. That's why you should, again, try to experience more stuff, try to learn more stuff. So you can understand a little bit better how it all works. So let's see if I have any more notes for what I want to show for today, but I'm pretty sure we are almost to the end. Yes, exactly. There's just one last thing that is very interesting to see, which is when I look into the future, we are looking at our unconscious. So that's when we look up. When you're looking up, you're looking to your future or to your unconscious. When you look straight, you're looking to the present, and you're looking to your conscious part. And when you look down, if you're someone which is always looking down, what you're doing is you're looking to the past. You're being worried about the past, and you're looking at your subconscious. So that's very interesting for you to notice and pay attention whenever you're walking around. Where do you place your eyes? Or when you are meditating. If you're going to meditate, do you place your eyes straight, up, down? Where do you put them? So now that you know this, you can access, oh, I want to make a past life regression meditation or whatever. Don't put your eyes up, because you're going to be accessing the future. You want to access the past, right? So put your eyes down or something. Just try to play around with this. Tell me how you feel when you do meditate with the position of the eyes. Because remember, this is all a big mechanism. So how you put your hands together, how you put your arms, like gestures. Think about the Egyptians and the hieroglyphs. You had those guys doing like silly dances and whatever. This may look silly and cringe, but they activate the stuff in your brain and outside. Because this is, again, all a big projection. So everything you do inside, externally, becomes inside and vice versa. So, for example, you learn on Feng Shui. If your mind is all cluttered, go clean something on your home so that you declutter something outside. Therefore, you're decluttering something inside as well. I think this is all for today. I hope you liked. If you have any content suggestions, just let me know in the comments down here. And obviously, if you want to keep watching these, just follow me. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.